On AI Trust But Verify this week, we've got Elie Bursztein, cybersecurity expert, former guest. Mythos is a wake-up call. You're going to have to change your patching routine. You're going to have to figure out how to triage all kinds of cybersecurity issues. Great advice for not just technologists, but CEOs. Enjoy the show. Hey, everyone. It's Alec Crawford, your host. And here we've got Elie Bursztein, a repeat guest on the show. So everybody should know Elie, who works at Google DeepMind. And, so hey, Elie, thanks for coming on the show again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I think, look, Mythos has really been a wake-up call, I think, on the cybersecurity side. And a lot of stuff going on there. So just to get your initial thoughts about what's going on out there, and then we'll kind of do some deep dives into some specific topics.
Sure, sounds good. So the first thing, maybe for the people who are not familiar, Mythos is a upcoming model by Anthropic. And as part of a pre-release, they created a project called Glasswing, which was to give early access to Mythos to a set of various companies and organizations to try to find vulnerability. And the promises they have is it is finding so much vulnerabilities that before we flood the world with vulnerability, we try to give a head start, or they try to give a head start, or we as a community try to get a head start to companies to start finding and fixing vulnerabilities. I think following that, there was a lot of hype and there's a lot of discussion online. I think the first thing we could say is, one, it is unprecedented. This is the first time it has been done. And a lot of people have been questioning whether or not that is a real thing and the real deal, right? And I think there was a lot of analysis online. The reality is most of them are speculation or limited tests because they don't have access to Mythos as it comes, I believe, for everyone, but I might be wrong, but I believe with an NDA until it is officially available. So really the people testing it might or might not have really things. I think today, Firefox told a little bit more about their experience with Mythos, and I think it was pretty positive and they found a lot of things. I have heard from various people that it is actually everything, and we do work on an upcoming paper about vulnerability exploitation with actually Anthropic, and we actually have seen some of the results. I didn't run the model, but I've seen their result, and they seem to see that it is a real thing. So I think what people say online, it is not the real thing. I think that is not true. I think it is actually finding more vulnerability. So I think that's one thing. I think we need to separate people who try to rise the train of the web code and the people who are trying to use the system and try to figure out how much vulnerability they have. And there is, without a doubt, some function gain. It's hard to qualify at that point because until more tests are done formally, but the initial tests, which were published by a few organizations who did publish benchmarks, seem to indicate there is an increase. Right, so I think that's where we are. Now, the other thing we can mention, which I think is very important, is it is still on curve. So what we mean by that is, well, if it's so good at finding vulnerability, is Mythos a jump capability which is not following the expected improvement of other model? And according to public benchmark, and I think we can probably put a link, it is still on curve, meaning that yes, it is better in some dimension, and clearly it seems that Anthropic have found a way to make it much better at finding vulnerability. But on the general capability, for something which is more expensive and more capable, I think the number floated publicly are 5 times bigger than Opus. It is maintaining curve in, for example, math reasoning, batching, etc. So it's not like a general, 5x better. It is about what expected, but with a spike into capability into while finding vulnerabilities and other offensive capability. Now, that leaves you, and I know it's a long answer, but I think there's a lot of things which kind of need to be developed, and we can talk more about the general state, is it is also not 10x better at patching vulnerabilities, right? So I think we have a red team versus blue team problem now. It might be an imbalanced temporary, and we can talk about that, I think, more. But that's where I think for the listener where we are, which is, yes, it is real. Yes, it is finding more stuff. No, it is not AGI coming in. And it is good to have a wake-up call where now cybersecurity for the first time seems to have really entered center stage. And I think that will be really good for the industry. And while it's going to be painful, extremely painful, we're going to have a more better, resilient infrastructure at the end of the tunnel. So I think we have to buckle up and we have to work together on that.
Yeah. Well, let's take a step back and think better infrastructure at the end of the tunnel. That sounds great. And I do want to spend a lot of time on cybersecurity here, but let's take a step back and think about, you're the CEO of mid-size financial institution, maybe a bank or a regional bank in the US, or a wealth manager, or an insurance company. You're not a technology guy. What should you be telling your CTO, your CEO? What questions should you be asking your chief information security officer besides how much more money do you need?
So that is a great question. So I think we need to tease it apart on two things. One is commodity software you use and proprietary software we use, right? If we talk a bank have tens, hundreds, maybe thousands custom software for trading, processing, analyzing, like they have so much. So the commodity software that is used, and hopefully people use, commodity SQL databases, commodity web server, commodity this, commodity that, those would have done the work pre-release of Mythos publicly to have doing the hardening, right, to the best of their ability, again, to the best of their ability. And they probably are scrambling to the patches at the moment, and they would probably do that. So that's going to be twofold. So I think that should be covered on, well, patches are probably coming for the software you have. For your custom software, well, you have to figure out a plan to run the testing and the patching. And we can talk about what it's going to do operationally, because I think most people are not ready for the operation, right? Winter is really coming and you have to man the wall. And I think manning the wall, for the analogy, is you really have to prepare for that type of thing. And we can talk about what this vulnapocalypse, as people call it, is going to look like and what we can do. There are a bunch of particles. But I think so that's going to be those two dichotomy where it's like, well, first, prepare to have software which needs to be patched. Second, you have a ton of things which have vulnerabilities. And now you have to do some sort of prioritization. So happy to go in each of them in turn or however you would like. But I think we need to be a little bit more articulate on how to prepare.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Look, I think, why don't we talk about patching and triaging that first? Because I think that's going to be most companies' experiences out there. They're using a ton of commercial products, standard products, maybe some open source products.
Yeah.
And how do they need to address patching at this point?
Okay, so I think this is going to be... So we have three scenarios. I think when I'm running tabletop, I think there's three scenarios. And so I will tell you which one I think exists and which one I think is going to happen. Again, personal assessment doesn't mean I'm right, just starting. So Mythos get out, and there is a fruit of patch which come with it, probably before, and then it comes out. I believe this is in this summer. I think if plans do not change, I believe it's in the summer. And then way more vulnerability will be found, right? I think that's going to be what's going to happen. And so now we have three options. Option one, it's a one-time bump. Option one is like we clear out so much of the vulnerabilities that for the foreseeable future, we have cleared the deck, and it's a one-time effort. And then the question is, do you have the ability to mobilize your IT workforce to absorb a shock? If tomorrow you have to patch 7 times a day, 10 times a day, can you put everything on hold? Can you put everything on hold and can you absorb the shock? Have you run a like a stress test that you are able to stress test your patching capability. That is what people should really do in the next 2 months. It's like, okay, let's run a drill where we need to patch 25%, 30%, 40% of our infrastructure. And we need to do that for 2 weeks, right? Like, let's not make it like an infinite drill, but say, can I absorb a shock of vulnerability? Which is scenario number one. The follow-up of that is, you have one bump, and then sometime after, you have another bump, right? And so now we live into this bump stabilize world. And so you have to now have it as a process where you're like, well, I need a SWAT team and I need people to drop things and be able to patch immediately and then resume. So it's patch, resume. Is your life cycle for that? I don't believe so. I don't believe anyone in the industry have this massive spike of patches to absorb. We're not ready for that, but we know what it's going to look like. Now, the third scenario is we have an initial bump, and then we're going to have a continuous improvement of more and more vulnerabilities, so the acceleration of that. And then we have some slight bump. And the reason why I think that is that's what's going to happen is model distillation is extremely hard to prevent, right? So what will probably likely happen is someone is going to distill Mythos despite Anthropic best effort, and maybe not perfectly, but they would. And then we're going to have more and more capable open source model to find vulnerability, which in turn will do some sort of improvement. So you'll have big jump, continuous vulnerability, big jump, continuous vulnerability. So that means from a CTO perspective, well, I need to now have a larger patching team. And then I need to be able to do also the absorption of big thing. So I need to do it now to increasing capability and need to also have a larger team, right? And I think that is the two things which needs to be sort of as a general principle. And that's for the thing you have patch for. And there's a bunch of consequences we can talk about, like, are bug bounty going to survive, right? I think if the cost of vulnerability goes to zero, where is the industry going at is another complicated discussion of that. But I think from people in the bank or healthcare industry, the thing is like, can you absorb that? And can you do it? And, there's a lot of things we can talk about. Do you have the patching inventory infrastructure? Do you know what to patch? How good are you with your IT management? How good are you into testing process so you don't collapse and that type of stuff? And what happens if you need to get put on offline and be able to resume, that type of stuff? And I think those conversations have been put on the back burner for like a decade now for many people. I'm like, well, this is not a realistic scenario, and now it's becoming one. So that's, I think, what is for vendor supply patch, right? And then we can talk about the other two, your personal thing and the SaaS things, right? And I hope that answers the question.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So that'll make sense. Look, what kind of resources can one apply in terms of patching internal software, right? That just sounds way harder to the extent that it's all theoretically running internally and things like that. Maybe that's less of an issue, but anything that's exposed externally, which is probably most of the software being used in financial institutions, what does that look like, right? Because some of them just don't have access to Mythos. Obviously, the big guys do, but what if you're a regional bank and you don't have access? What's your recourse? What should you do?
So I think it's interesting, right? So I think there's two things. Let's take an aside first on that, because I think there's an important thing that people missed. And there's a lot of narrative in the finance industry, which is wrong, which is like, oh, AI is eating SaaS. And you're like, well, actually, if you had offloaded your software to a SaaS, and I'm not making an argument for any of them, well, you don't have to deal with that. And they would have done it for you. And part of the value of the SaaS is not only the software, it's also the people who maintain it and have all those processes and this ability to patch it for you. And they're like, well, how much legacy code do you have versus how much you could have as a SaaS? Do you really want to have a patching and security team which is on call 24/7? Is it really what you want for your custom software? How much cost is it versus a SaaS? And when this AI is eating the SaaS, that is a counterpoint. I think there is a lot of people who will be like, well, you know what? I can't deal with a vulnerability every two minutes or 2 hours. That is too expensive for me. A SaaS looks good to me. So I think it's going to shift that narrative. And I think people who have decided in a more the very clickbaity way in the last few months that SaaS is dead and AI is going to destroy everything. I think it is changing the job. It is changing the reason. But I don't think it's like reinventing and killing everything. I think that's not what's happening. At the end of the day, you need maintaining and controlling things is far more difficult than building. So maybe building is faster, and we can debate that if we want. But that's one thing. Right? And for people who want to keep the thing, well, you'll have to pay for Mythos or for OpenAI or for Google or for whomever you would like, or use an open source model and GPU. Maybe some get better at that as we expect it to be. And then you'll have to have continuous integration, where it's like, well, every time a developer submits something, it has to go through pen testing with AI. And every time it finds a bug, you'll have to do it. And you'll have to change completely your development discipline and be far, far more aggressive on, well, far more test. So do you have a CI continuous integration thing which runs every time? Do you have AI plugged in? And again, I'm not endorsing any one of them. I'm just putting like in the general framework here. You have to do that, right? So for people who want to keep legacy software, that's also another conversation with their own company, which is now there is a cost. And this cost needs to be factored. And now there's a bunch of discussion coming in of like, how many AI do you want? Do you want one? Do you want two? Do you want three? And just so we're clear, AI is probably way better at finding bugs. And we can talk about triage on how to simplify, but then writing the batch is still going to be costly because you have to review them, you have to make sure they work, and you still have to deploy them, right? So I think it is shifting the cost, but the cost is not going to zero, like, oh, I click a button and then my problem goes away. We're not there yet at all, right? I'm not saying it's not making progress, I'm saying it's not going to be resolved, but that's where we are. So I think that's the trade-off that needs to be thought through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, look, the most important word I just heard of the last 60 seconds was triage, right? Because no organization, whether it's a government or even one of the huge banks, has infinite resources. So how should they triage, their limited resources in terms of fixing things internally, engaging with third parties and vendors and SaaS tools, and at the same time, making sure they're doing all the things they need to do that the regulators are asking them to do. Literally last Wednesday, the FDIC sent a letter out to every bank CEO, every bank president saying, Mythos is out there, cybersecurity hygiene is super important. So the regulators are going to be all over this over the next few months.
It's tough. So I think you need to have some understanding of your infrastructure, on what is publicly facing, as we discussed, versus what's internally facing. And what is internally facing means, is it like limited capability versus large capability, right? Take as a bank, the Swift system is probably what you want to protect the most. Right? You probably don't want to have a system who can do Swift transfer to probably high priority, but you have to run your own threat model, right? And I think you have to run to organization. If you're healthcare, system touching patient data is a problem. System touching data is a problem. Lab equipment and lab result is a problem. So I think those are the things, right? So you have to decide what it is, and maybe to an extent reduce access to the system and have better access control. And we're back to what we discussed, I think, in the first episode we had together about SAFE, which is a lot of it is good cybersecurity. We kind of know how to do access control. We kind of know how to do attack surface management and attack surface defense, ASM, right? I think that's kind of vulnerabilities cannot exist for decades, right? So I think that's what it is. Now, the interesting part about triage is, and that's what I was mentioning, we're working on a joint research, all frontier labs, on exploitability. It seems that models have made progress on exploiting software. So I think if you have a bug, that's a problem. If you have a bug that AI can actually exploit, that is a bigger problem, because the barrier to exploitation dropped to marginal cost. I don't want to say zero, but like $1. And so part of the state-of-the-art AI-driven find and patching vulnerability is reproduction, where you ask the AI to say, here's a bug report. Now write me a proof of concept that you can actually exploit the bug. It is by no means a guarantee. And maybe you need to do it 3 or 4 times to make sure, depending on your budget, that this is reproducible or not. But that is a good indicator. And I think that's we're back to, for triage, you'll have to also AI assisted triage, right? And so we're back to how good is your infrastructure testing? Can you bring your stuff as a container? Do you have container? Do you have the ability to code the infrastructure? We talk about all those things, right? Can you do that? Can you test? And if you can test, can you reproduce a bug, right? Is the AI can able to exfiltrate something or something like that and can prove it? And I think if it is reproducible, then you can prioritize it a little bit higher. Now, that proves the bug is real. And we're back to what's going to happen to the future of the industry if you want to talk more about that. But I think from an operational standpoint I think there's a long, hard look to look at the ability to test and verify on your infrastructure for your custom software.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to go back to SaaS.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, I don't want to deal with that. Like, I'm saving $100 per year, and now I have to have all of the other things, and I have to pay AI some money. I'm like, well, I'm done with that. Right? I think you're paying a premium, right? And the premium is maintenance, not necessarily creation. Yeah. All back to that thing.
Veripath exists to empower every financial institution in the AI era. We provide a secure, scalable path to embrace AI across the entire organization, unlocking efficiencies, elevating client experiences, and enabling every employee to work smarter. Veripath builds our platform with innovation top of mind to strengthen performance and trust. Totally makes sense. Yeah, look at the governance part, what you talked about on the first show. So true. It's something that Veripath is super focused on. What are people allowed to do? Maintaining permission awareness. And if you're not doing that at your institution, you're just setting yourself up for a pretty big problem or a data leak. I did want to go down the route of pen testing, right? And one of the things that has become kind of standard in the corporate world is, you do a cyber pen test once a year. They come in, they tell you stuff to fix, and you fix it, and then you wait another year. That is over at this point, as far as I'm concerned, right? And what is and obviously, look, there are other companies that are obviously doing stuff all the time, but I'm just talking about your standard mid-sized financial institution. Like the requirement is pen test once a year. That's what they do. What does a new framework look like that? What replaces that?
So I think that's what you hinted at, which I think is very true, is we have a lot of focus these days on code, right? And again, how good is Mythos at pen testing? I don't even know if it was evaluated. We don't know, but eventually fully autonomous attacks are going to come, whereas be like, well, go exploit. And I think Anthropic had reported a few months back that some nation-state attackers have been using AI to automate a vast majority of a campaign. So I think that is a real thing. So eventually going to get there. I think ASM-driven 24/7 agent looking to the network to find and fixing are going to be a reality. Now, I don't think anyone is ready for that just yet. I don't think we have the AI technology. I think it's getting there. I think there's a lot of company and system working on it. And again, don't want to mention any of them because it's not about a particular vendor, it's about a trend. And I think there is things to be done there and expect rapid progress and because of the focus on it. I think that's the next big wave after code security. I think people can't do both at once. So I think you're very much at the forefront of what's next. I do think until the code, literally the field apocalypse is going to be resolved. I think people need a little bit of focus on that. I think it's going to come after that, but certainly misconfigured cloud services, weak credential.
Oh yeah.
All those things are going to be so easily found by AI, or are already, to be honest. Yeah. That, it's going to be another way, like, well, we need that. And then, cybersecurity is coming a very big transformation. I think it's also posed a question of today, if you're a bug bounty hunter, you make money out of bug bounty. finding a bug has become, well, marginal cost, right? I think, like, well, I can find better bugs than AI. Maybe today, and even so, if someone have already 2,000 bugs in the queue, do they really want 2001? Maybe not. I think and that poses a problem, right? That poses a problem of what is the future of bug bounty? What is the future of bug bounty company? They have a place. And also we could imagine that after the low-hanging fruit are going to be curbed, we will need bug bounter again. So they're going to be a team. And the question is, how do you protect that work stream? How that work stream, we can help them evolve and keep there. Maybe, having a production now become mandatory. Maybe having a patch become mandatory now. Maybe it's a higher level of things. Or maybe we have to keep people in the loop. Because sure, we can make progress and we can cut costs now, but 3 years from now, that's going to be a very, very different ball game. And I think the short-term thinking versus, I would say, medium-term thinking is a big problem for our industry. And then by your own token, people who do pen testing, how far are we from the AI doing the basic pen testing, running the scanner, looking at the report and say, hey, here's the 20 things to fix, and hey, let's go fix that. It's getting there, right? If it's not there. I think that line of work also has to change. And so that leaves us to this interesting spot for the industry as a whole, which is people are going to be displaced. I don't think it's not even clear we can reduce the number of people. What we saw is like, well, now we need more people focusing on batching. So, they have to come from somewhere. So it's not, I think there is less work. I think there is more work. It's just a different type of work. And the pace of adopting AI is what makes it incredibly difficult and bumpy. If you remember ATM did disrupt the banking sector, right? ATM was there and, instead of going to the bank to get money, you would just swipe your card. And then eventually even that got displaced by payment by your phone. You know what? Like the vast majority of transactions today, you don't even have a physical thing anymore. But it took 20 years. And we got the time for bank to reinvent themselves and what it means to come to a bank. And, we have Capital One, which is even a cafe now. So, people have found a way to keep the people and do different type of job. With AI, we just don't take a breather. It goes so fast. It's the fastest adopted technology of humanity, way faster than anything else. So we don't, the labor market doesn't have a time to adjust. We don't have time to retrain people because we don't even know what to retrain. And then trickle down effect is people start to be discouraged to go to CS or computer science because like, well, AI is going to replace the job. Why would I go there? And then 5 years from now, when we will discover what are the new job, which I'm sure they will, because think about, we never thought we'd have like patch SWAT team like 5 months ago. 5 months ago, we say, hey, we need a patch SWAT team. You'll be like, no, I don't think the bank will do that. And then we're like, well, actually, we need to consider it. And I think this shift exists, right? So we don't have time to adapt. And that's why I say it's going to be a bump period. It's going to be a bump period because of that. And it's going to be a bump period because maybe for the listener who don't know that, AI is far better at reading than writing, or at reviewing than generating. So the generative capability, which is fixing a config, writing patch, and is lagging. It's not that it's not improving, it's just not improving. It's improving with always some sort of delta. I think last time I checked, it was like 10%, 12%, but give or take, we're going to have better red team before we get better blue team.
Yeah.
And that sucks. Excuse my French, but that sucks. I think that's really where we are, right?
Yeah. Bien sûr, to keep the French theme. So one of the things you said was go offline. And I think that's the phrase that scared the Treasury Secretary and the Treasury in general. I actually was talking to a former member of Treasury just a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, look, we've had a task force dealing with cybersecurity and stability of the financial system for decades. And we regularly, at the end of our meeting, we're like, yeah, we're good. And then Mythos came out. And at the end of that meeting, they're like, we're not good, right? So they're pretty scared, right? And I think that, and not that something's going to happen, but they are very concerned that something can happen. And it's one thing if a bank goes offline, all right, well, that's bad for that bank. It's bad for their customers. obviously we've seen some financial services companies get pretty badly hacked within the last year, to the extent that some of them basically didn't recover. But that's very different than the financial system. And I think that's really the concern. And one of the points that they've been making, including in the FDIC letter that was sent out to bank presidents recently, is it's not necessarily just the bank, right? It could be software that lots of banks use, right? Well, think about, there are only a handful, for example, of what we'll called core service providers to banks. So that's FAS, Fiserv, Jack Henry, CUCC, handful of others that basically provide the core software where they keep the banking data, your name, your account number, how much money you have, if you have a loan. If one of those guys gets hacked, it's not like a bank, it's 600 banks or 1,000 banks, right? So that's really the concern. And I think what the audience would be interested to hear is, how realistic is something like that? How much should we be worried? And what can these key software providers do to keep the financial system safe?
Okay, hard question. Nice.
I thought I was going to ask easy questions.
Yeah, that's how you know me now. Okay, fair enough. No, I think it's a great question. I think the first thing we need to go back is our threat model, right? And I think we have three types of actors usually. We have nation state, we have financially motivated, and we have other people who are motivated by fame or fun or whatever we would like to call it. I don't have a name for those. And they have different motivation. I think motivation is important. So if we start with nation state, well, they already have exploit and they're already pretty good at doing it. So if they wanted to do it, they would probably could have done it yet already, right? I think that's like the top cyber power in the world have stockpile of exploit. I don't think they're lacking that, right? I think they have decided to not do it for obvious reason. I think very few nations have an incentive to destroy the financial system. I don't think they want to have the population in crisis. So, I think those are, while they have the capability for a while, they probably also have a very strong incentive to not do it. So that's not going to be the main problem. There is some caveat to that, which is, and we can talk about, is irreversible transaction, where if, for example, North Korea can get more hand on cryptocurrency, which is the primary way they fund all the operation, they would. Right? So I think now, if you're a crypto exchange, if you have crypto, if you're a bank who just accepted crypto, well, no, that's the problem, right? Let's start with the first problem is the financial system as a whole is pretty resilient because you make a transfer, but the money stay in the bank. I mean, say in the banking system. So shove come to push, you can revert things. Sometimes we say we can't, but like if really something really bad happened, people can coordinate and can do one-off reversal. That's fine. If you have cryptocurrency, well, that's it. The money has been transferred, the crypto coin have been, and there are billions of dollars in cryptocurrency. So I think
4 trillion.
Yeah, there you go. You know more than me. 4 trillion. There you go. Well, right. And I think there is a threat model, which is like, what can I revert? What can I not revert? And I think the banking system is also, if you're a bank, you have to segregate your systems. Like, well, I can take offline my consumer chatbot. I have an AI chatbot and, I have a tech support. Maybe I can close that. That's fine. My website can be offline for a moment. It's annoying, but nothing bad happened. As you said, my interaction and my integration with the financial system, that's a different problem. And so I think hopefully bank and when we put our healthcare in the same thing, have a segregated network where you don't connect everything to everything and you have some sort of segregation and you know what you can turn off offline safely or not and what should never have the most sensitive things. Now, you need to monitor things. Like if you start to see a huge outflux of money or a huge outflux of cryptocurrency, which is far more than you expected, something is wrong. And maybe you delay transaction. Again, that is painful to people. That is not the end of the world, but you need to have those kind of outflow monitorings. Is it in place? I don't know. I'm not working for those banks. I can't tell you that, but there is some serious anomaly detection to be put. There is some serious segregation to be put, and there are more risky things. So what I'm really concerned is really the crypto road, because it's like, why would you write a ransomware where you can just seize all the crypto tokens from someone and just transfer them unilaterally, right? And that's the problem with hot wallet versus cold wallet. If you have your secret key in a cold storage, doesn't matter, can't do it, right? AI is not breaking crypto. If it's in a hot storage, like it's managed by the bank or managed by an exchange, and well, your money can go away. And did it happen? I believe NiceHash was hacked, I believe, and they did have a lot of their money left because they're custodian of the secret key. So I think that's a problem. Do you have an HSM? Do you have a way to limit those risks? I don't know. Are you monitoring that? And I think the other one you didn't mention, but I'm concerned about is the integrator, Plaid, contactless, and all those people who are, doing all the integration between systems, because if they get hacked, every bank gets hacked, right? And I think you're right. You have this massive dependency. And I think people haven't done the mapping, as you said, on like, okay, what are the systems which, if they got compromised, we got hosed. And then if we got hosed, what do we do? And I think that brings up to my favorite, one of my favorite exercise, which is not well known, which is called a pre-mortem. And the pre-mortem is you start by assuming that something went wrong. So here say we got hacked. And then you only focus on why. You don't debate if you're going to get hacked. That is not the point. The point of the pre-mortem is to raise dissident voice and to do almost like a tabletop, if you would. We're like, well, okay, we got hacked. What happened? And then people will have different ideas. And of course, you should get everyone to write their own ideas in silence, because otherwise you're going to have conversions too fast. And with that, you could try to get a threat model of like, okay, here's our weakest point. Here's what our own personnel who use the system every day have a sense of what it is. And you need to prioritize and reduce as much as you can. And I think that's all you can do. And that has to be done. So back to what you said is, we were fine until we were not fine because we didn't evolve our threat model. We didn't do maybe enough of those kind of exercises of like, okay, well, if an exchange gets pirated, how much cryptocurrency is bleeding, how we stop that? If it's, how do we reverse in terms of catastrophe? Same thing for airline. If Amadeus goes offline, Amadeus is one of those, there's only 3 booking systems in the world, then it's a big problem because now no plane move. So there are some of those, every industry have this kind of linchpin, and you need to isolate them, and you need to figure out what happened if that happened to you. And if you're a downstream consumer, what do you do? And I think that's hard. It's really, really hard.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time. So my last question, and then we'll just chat a little bit, is really about AI cybersecurity, right? So we keep seeing these stories about jailbreaking models, hacking models, and just getting way more creative around. The last one I saw was someone jailbreaking Anthropic by converting stuff into Morse code, which it then promptly translated back and executed. And so anyway, there's all kinds of creative ways to hack and jailbreak models and cause agents to do things they're not supposed to, like send money or crypto, which just happened this week, apparently. What are some kind of more practical suggestions for, let's say, financial institutions who are adopting AI? Like, what are some things that they should think about and adopt to safeguard their AI from a cyber standpoint?
So first thing, I think we should be a little bit positive, which is most frontier models do report improvement into jailbreaking resilience. So I think on one hand, I think there are progress which are made. I mean, it's a non-easy, there is no zero, like a single fix for it, but there might be some fix to which will reduce the risk. The second problem we have is AI, I think it's important to remember that AI is, we're trying to do 2 conflicting things. One, we try to tell the AI, please follow what I ask you. And the big new thing is skills, right? We say, oh, here's a markdown, because for people who don't know, a skill essentially is just, at its core, a set of instructions into a file, and there might be some attached code to it, but essentially you tell the AI, here's a list of of instruction that you can conditionally load when you need them to be better at it. That's what the skill is, to be honest. Right? And it's a very powerful technique, but it's just what it is. But then, well, what is the difference between a skill and a prompt injection? Right? And
Yeah, not a lot.
yeah, not a lot, not a whole lot, right? And there are a bunch of hacking technique. I think the bleeding edge of prompt injection today is via skill. I think getting AI to load malicious skill one or another, or tricking it to believe it's a skill, is a big problem because we train AI to follow the skill because people want the AI to follow the skill. Right? So in one way you say, hey, obey blindly what I told you. And they're like, well, do it, but only if it's me and not the other guy into the stream. But then the problem is the stream is a collection of context. It's a collection of things. And so I think it is a very difficult subject for that exact reason of tension between flexibility, instruction following, and refusal to obey based on those things. So I think what you could do for sure is you could use better sandboxing technology. You can use better filtering to limit the thing. You should also not have a hodgepodge of tools. I think if you have 5 agents, you should ask yourself, is the agent 2 really need a writing tool? Like, for example, if you have a bank account and you have a customer system, maybe reading is fine. And reading some field is probably even better. Do you need to be able to write, make change on the bank account of the user as an AI chatbot? Probably not. So I think there's a lot of getting you can do at the tool level because tool is how the AI interact with the world. So the more control you get on the tool, the better you reduce the blast radius, right? And I think that is probably the most practical thing is don't give the agent access to your entire file system. Don't get the agent access to your credential directly. And don't let the agent have like access to hundreds of tools.
Yeah.
Now, the caveat there, Alec, which I think is very important to explain to people is, if you give the model access to Python or to a programming language you host.
Yeah, it can do anything.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
yeah, the other issue is an agent that has access to other agents, and it's hard to figure out like what does it have access to overall, right? It becomes difficult to control or even analyze.
Yeah, it become if people want to have agent to agent to agent, that's become even more complicated. You can also have the idea of like an agent hijacking the control for another agent. And yeah, I think it's become really, really hard to reason about. I haven't seen too much of those use cases just yet. So I think a lot of people talk about this idea of having agent of agent of agent. I haven't seen too much of it. I've seen, oh, you do. Okay. Well.
Yeah, no, it's definitely out there already.
Okay, well, I think it exists, right? I think there is this really cool things where you have multiple sub-agents and they coordinate, but they are all from within the same, kind of single prompt. It's like the same prompt, but like solved by multiple agents in different settings is a very different thing than you talking to a third-party agent, which I think is super. It's going to happen, as you said. If it already happened, I haven't seen it. I'm sure some people are trying it, and I'm sure there are use cases, and that's going to be even more interesting. But yeah. Wow, the job security.
There you go. Job security. Anything else you want to talk about? What did we miss? What's important?
No, I think that's it. I think we're back to the first episode where we say, one important thing. Right? I think one important thing for now is figure out patching and code discipline. I think that's enough for people who have that on top of their normal job. I think it's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of risks there. I think it's going to be really important for them on doing that and figure out what they want for themselves. We talk about SaaS and personal code and patch vendor, and that is a problem. I think that's the one who needs to be resolved by summer. So yeah.
Let's talk about what's happening with AI or what we think is going to happen this year. That's going to be really cool. So we can end on a positive note.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of really, really good things have happened. I think we have reached a point where agents are really reliable, right? And I think you can ask them to do a lot of interesting things. I think we have seen very, very rapid progress of models, and that's really, really exciting. I think it is getting to the point where it is really a practical tool. We don't know yet if it's going to do one order of magnitude better than it is today, but it is making still progress and things are improving. So I think that's really, really interesting. I think there will be a lot of interesting diversification and a lot of opportunity for people to do custom things. Like, for example, if you give it financial data, I think an AI with financial data and specialized instruction and training and knowledge will be a pretty good way to help people lift financial education. Right? I don't think it is going to be able to do the complicated trading or that type of stuff, but I do think for people who want to basically understand what is a 401k, how to do the saving, looking at the tax return. I did my tax return. I asked my agent to actually look at it. I did a skill and say, here is all the rules for this year. Please double check. And we found a minor bug. Right? I forgot to fill one checkbox. It's fine. It was like, well, a wrong line. Not a problem, but I think it's interesting that AI is going to really help lift the general population. And I think the most hopeful thing I have today is you get access to a far higher level of baseline, whether it's health, finance, or sport coaching. Like, hey, how do I make matter? Well, I think the AI can help you with having a reasonable sport program. Is it going to replace coaches? No, but like for someone who have not the means to get a coach and want some help, will work. Will it replace financial advisor? Probably not, but will it help people who struggle with a basic concept or don't know what can I do a rollover on my 401k? Is my 401k much better than my saving account? That type of stuff. I think it is going to lift up quite a bit. So I think that's really, really cool. I think it's going to really enable most of us to have more broader insight into like a stronger baseline. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I'm seeing is really, agentic workflows and more complex systems being able to really take a lot of the drudge work off people's plates, right? So one of the things we're doing is commercial loan closing for one of our bank clients, for example, and it's doing the stare and compare stuff. Does this driver's license match the loan application and all this other stuff, which, humans used to do. And now, 80% of it is automated and presented to a credit officer or a loan closer. I think that's, all that drudge work. Yeah, just not fun stuff, right? So people are happy to have computers do it. So anyway.
I think, as you said, it's 80%, which means you can't really replace a person because the person's still doing 20.
And they're doing the important 20 too.
Yeah.
Right?
So the 20 is going to expand, right?
Yeah.
20 is going to expand. And so that's going to be interesting. I said, we'll adapt. I think overall it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be bumpy.
Yeah.
And sadly, for some people, it's going to be worse than others. Like, for example, in tech, we have a lot of layoffs, right? And I think tech is the first one to self-shrink. I think it's going to shift over time. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be shifting fast enough. I'm not an economist, and I don't predict the future, but I think for cybersecurity, we're seeing a shift. A lot of the job roles are going to be redefined. But I think people might like it. I think it's going to be different. I don't think you're going to like the need for cybersecurity in the next world. I don't view that.
Yeah.
And I think financial is going to remain finance. People still need to move money. So I don't think like the fundamental of the society has changed. I think people are a little bit too extreme. And when people see that, I think it's a little bit too much of a fun and too much FOMO because yes, it's making a big revolution, but I don't think it's changing our way of living completely.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you. Awesome. Elie, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great. Really, really important stuff, really informative, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alec, for having me.